Well, it's so lovely to be here with you all. Thank you so much for joining us for a conversation that I have to imagine feels pretty timely for everyone in this room. What does it mean to lead during and through uncertainty and change? And maybe I'll just do a quick poll. I'm so curious. How many folks in this room have experienced changes in their funding, their partners, their staff, their programs in the last 5 months? Put your hands up. Right? I don't know that, I think I see most hands. And Brooke, when you and I were last together in DC almost 5 months ago, I think we only could imagine what our world would look like sitting here together here in June. And I'm so curious to hear a little bit from your perspective at National Skills Coalition around what has it meant to lead in this moment, right? And you've been with the organization for over a decade, which like amazing, and talk about career paths. What feels similar about past moments of disruption and change from a policy or an economic climate point of view, and what might feel really different in this moment?
Yeah, thank you, Monica, for inviting me into this conversation, and to all of you for being part of it, and to JFF. So for those of you who don't know National Skills Coalition, we are, as our name suggests, a national coalition that envisions a future where everyone is guaranteed valuable skills training, good jobs, and economic prosperity. And we do that through working with our coalition partners to advance workforce policies that give everyone a fair shot at real opportunity, both at the federal level and in the states. So I live in the Washington, D.C. region, even though we work with partners all over, and I've done policy work for a long time. And this is definitely a newer experience than it has been. We are seeing pretty significant cuts happening to programs that really support working people and local businesses, our proposed cuts. We're seeing changes among agencies. And yet, I was also reflecting with some of our partners that National Skills Coalition was founded as a coalition back in the mid-1990s, when there were sweeping reforms to the safety net and to workforce training. And we were founded by a group of practitioners and workforce leaders who felt like the programs that their workers, their local businesses relied on that were producing positive and equitable results were not being seen by federal policymakers, and they didn't have a voice with those policymakers. So fast forward to this time and period, we are in a time, yet again, where work and the economic pain that working class people and local businesses are feeling is top of mind for lots of people across our nation. It's part of a political and policy discourse, and there's a real need for local community leaders, local practitioners, workers, and students themselves and businesses to have a voice to shape what those changes are going to look like.
So interesting. Yeah, I so appreciate you coming back to the origin story of National Skills Coalition, right? And I think sometimes in moments of change and turmoil and headwinds, right, it can be easy to sort of feel unmoored. And I think at World Education Services, so we are a 50-year-old nonprofit social enterprise focused on helping people learn, work, and thrive. And really that means supporting immigrants, refugees, and international students in their education, economic journeys here in the US and around the world. And two, we've been having understandably, a lot of our work sits at a really tense intersection of issues at this moment, and yet we have the opportunity as an organization that shows up as a funder, that shows up as a policy and advocacy practitioner, that also shows up providing products and services, to stay the course and provide stability and really remain anchored in what it was here that we were founded to do over 50 years ago, right? And I think that's something that I've been reflecting as a leader a lot on, is like, what does it mean to keep that North Star, even where, yes, partners and communities are facing such challenges?
Yeah, well, right, and I mean, this is a conversation I've been having with our partners, with our amazing team of folks, with the students and workers and local businesses that we work with, right? Is like, how do we stay completely focused on that vision that we have, where everybody is guaranteed, valuable skills, good jobs, and economic prosperity, the impacts that we want to see associated with that, and at the same time be super flexible, super adaptive to the strategies on how we are going to get there. And I feel like some of this we learned through the pandemic, right? There was this moment during the pandemic and as a workforce organization where all of a sudden we're all talking about, and I'm looking at one of our partners from California, the future of work, and then it happened immediately.
Yeah.
And there was a moment where people's lives, of course, were turned upside down, where the essential contributions of working people, the people who care for us, the people who keep our infrastructure going, the people who make sure that our grocery stores have shelf stocked, all of these jobs that require skills training, the essential contributions of those jobs came into focus. And that was happening at the same time that other people were shifting in the labor market, right? And we had a work plan at that time, and we had to put that aside and be in conversation with the communities that we worked with about what they needed from us as a national organization at that time to help them move forward. And part of that for us, right, is creating a platform for people's voices to be heard, for them to shape the policies that are impacting them and to push back against the ones that might be causing harm.
Yeah, so appreciate that grounding, right? At the end of the day, who are the workers and learners and communities that we're talking about, and what do they need, and how are we making sure, right, as leaders, right, where we are making a myriad of choices that impact the work that we can do, that we are listening to those voices and keeping them in our heads as we make those decisions. Like, I so appreciate y'all's approach with that. And certainly something that deeply resonates too is how we've stayed grounded in this moment of continuing to go to both our customers, our immigrant and refugee communities and workers, right, to say, what might we need? How might we need us to show up as a national organization? And I think to the earlier conversation too around, right, this is a moment to acknowledge, right, where funding cuts impact so many sectors, workforce development, education, immigration, resettlement, and so much more, that can only exacerbate a feeling of scarcity, a feeling of competition amongst our organizations. And so I just want to pull the thread, though, that you shared around both, one, coalition, right? How do we move with others? How do we think flexibly about, we have still the same shared vision and mission, but we might think about hows differently, and we might think about collaboration differently to maximize the resourcing we do have. And also thinking about who's best positioned to do what, right? Like, we're both national organizations. Like, we don't need to do the amazing work that local organizations are doing, right? How can we uplift, support, resource that, right? And then get out of the way. So I also think about lanes too. And then also, like, particularly in this moment where I think finding bright spots is so important. How do we uplift the stories of really powerful action and change that can inspire and keep momentum going from local communities and leaders, right? To really, as national platforms, I think that can be a huge opportunity as well to keep the momentum going on issues.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, yes, I do think it's about thinking about collaboration and collective action and lanes, but it's also thinking about how we share power, and I think for us, like, as a national organization, we can take some risks that our partners who are doing direct service, and dealing with the day in and day out of having folks come to them, I've lost my job, what's next for me? Or, I'm working full time while raising my kids and taking a course at a community college, and I got an unexpected car bill, and that's gonna disrupt everything. Like, that's what our partners on the ground are dealing with day in and day out, and now with fewer resources in many cases, and with more scrutiny on the effectiveness of their programs and who they're serving. And so my question is, how do we take some risks, and because we have that space as a policy organization where we're not doing direct service, how do we take some risks in our policy work, always keeping our vision and mission and impact in mind, to be able to say here in DC, don't cut Medicaid and don't cut food assistance. It is those basic needs that people need when they're trying to climb up the economic ladder and figure out what's next for them in terms of their careers, right? And so being able to be that voice, I think, is helpful too, but always doing that, at least for me, in a way that's authentic and grounded in the experiences of our partners, including the students, workers, and businesses that are part of our network. And I've noticed for me as a leader, like it's both about courage and humility, right? You need those two things to go together to do that, because you might lean into something and take a risk knowing that you're gonna make a mistake or that things might not go exactly as you've planned, and now is the time to do that, right? But you have to have the humility to listen to other people in figuring out which risks you're going to take, how it's going to benefit the workers and businesses on the ground that you're trying to impact, and to get that feedback about what didn't go so right and change course.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I feel like we could just spend the rest of the time talking about this. I mean, this so resonates. And I'm so glad you brought into the conversation like the P word, power, right?
Yeah.
And I think, I'll say like in my role at West as Chief Social Impact Officer, I get the real privilege of sitting in a lot of different rooms, including at, say, peer tables with funders and philanthropy or others that are in this sort of national, binational organization space that may not be as dependent on, say, federal funding and are not facing some of the choices that our direct service partners are. And I listen to those conversations and I hear amazing things happening. And then I also hear things around saying, well, let's wait and see, right? Let's wait and see how this unfolds. Let's wait and see how we can be most helpful. And I would say, waiting and seeing is also actually making a decision, right? You were making a decision to not act. And I think sometimes that can be treated as a sort of risk management or mitigation play. But at the end of the day, if you work in the workforce, education, healthcare, immigration, climate, any of these fields, there is no way to do your work that doesn't involve some risk. And that's just a fact. And it doesn't have to be a scary fact, it's just a fact. And once you accept that fact as a leader, then you move forward. Because part of your role, right, is to listen deeply and ideally to the constituents that are closest to the issues, but then also to make some decisions, right? Because like clarity and moving forward is what's required of us in this moment. And if you're not up for that task, then let's have a different conversation, right? But I think that's something, thinking about that risk conversation in the field, I just want to like re-emphasize, like there is no zero risk scenario for anyone, and that's okay. And so then how do we think about where all of our organizations have a different risk calculus? Someone used like a risk envelope framing to me the other day, and I was like, oh, I kind of like that. You move things in and out of an envelope. But how do you think what makes sense for your organization, for your mission, for your constituents, what's authentic to you, and then move forward with it, right?
Absolutely. And here's the beauty of taking collective action and working collaboratively and in coalition. You don't have to take that risk on your own.
Totally.
Exactly. And then you have a community to support you.
Yeah.
On that note, was that the fastest 15-minute conversation we've had in a long time? Thank you both very much. We want to save a little time for questions. So if anybody has questions, I'll bring this microphone over to you and just wait until I get it from you so that we can hear you. Any questions for Monica and Brooke? Okay, right over here. Thank you.
Sure. Newton Sandlin, President and CEO, OIC of South Florida. We're a national, international workforce development organization. So how do we take a look at aggressive, continued expansion, elevation of cost across country, meeting people where they are in terms of economic mobility, yet trying to establish high wages? It's a journey, I believe, yet in some respects we can't control the cost of housing, et cetera, et cetera. So what are some of the things you think we can do to meet people where they are, yet have this target of high wages?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question. It's a real tricky one, right? And I think one like many of us have probably been working on for decades as we think about the systemic levers that need to get pulled to make sure that everyone can access good quality jobs and that a family sustaining wage, right, isn't so astronomical that businesses can't support it, right? And so I think this is where one of the things that gives me a little bit hope around how we might approach this is that we get to think not just as coalitions within the workforce space, but actually transcending sector, right? Like we need to be having conversations, right, with folks in the affordable housing space, right? We need to be having conversations with folks in the healthcare space to really think about what are the different models that can disrupt how we pay for things, right? Like at the end of the day, like someone has to pay for something, right? Is it government? Is it business? Is it an individual? Is it communities, right? So how do we think about models of financing different things, but also think across our lanes and our sectoral expertise to really come with some solutions that might perhaps, and I think many of you in this room probably are taking some of those approaches and have that different representation, but I think that's got to be part of the approach from my perspective to get to that. But Brooke, I'm sure you've got thoughts.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. You have to work with people in other areas. And I do think there is And I wanted to ask you this question, and we ran out of time. But, it's also not, like for us as an organization that works on workforce development, it's recognizing that the set of policies we work on are one solution in a much larger set of solutions and toolbox around economic mobility and shared prosperity, right? And so that means that we show up for our partners who are working on the other aspects of that, including many of our partners who are working on job quality efforts and have been for a very long time. How do we partner with them differently? How do we think about our work together? But the thing I wanted to ask you was like, how do you think about possibility and what can look different? Because I think this is a conversation about having a different set of policies to support working people in our country that skills training and workforce development is a piece of, but not the only piece of. And so it might require us to have some space, which is a really hard thing to do in these circumstances, to be in rapid response mode, to protect progress while also thinking to the future of what we would want something new and different that's really going to support working people to look like, and who needs to be in that conversation that we're not talking to already. It's the long game work.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know if we have time for one more question. If not, I can also riff on that.
I do think we have time for one more question. So let's see. Okay, how are we going to get past the camera here? There you go.
Thank you. So I'm Uttara Ramaswamy. I work at Europe United. I'm in the training solution strategy space. One of the things that you all mentioned, scarcity and funding issues. And I read the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report, and a big challenge that's coming up is how AI is going to impact entry-level jobs. So when you all think about, you're already grappling with one problem with respect to scarcity, how are you also adding the impact that AI might have and eliminate some of the job functions that are coming up, and how are you thinking about that from your specific roles?
Yeah.
I mean, I've been thinking a lot about this. I feel like everyone in our field is. For our organization, based on what we focus on, part is how, we're thinking about policies that can support workers to adapt and work alongside AI in a way that hopefully supports and advances their careers and economic mobility. I think we're also thinking about the fact that there might be some displacement, and how do we think back to the visioning piece about what we really need when it comes to a safety net and reskilling when you have a huge economic disruption. And then I think the final thing I would say is not thinking about those things on our own, but thinking about it with the folks on the ground, including workers and businesses who are trying to figure out these solutions in real time. And so I had a conversation recently where somebody was talking about the workers who are utilizing this technology in place, again, getting to the people who are most impacted and closest to the ground, are going to have the best ideas of what we need to do to make it useful for them to advance in their careers, for their businesses to become more effective, but also to protect against harms. And so how do we think about bringing that voice into the solutions and making sure that people who are going to be most impacted by this technology have a voice in the future of it?
Yeah, that all resonates a lot. I think you can, there's a huge spectrum, right, of the potential research and analysis on how large impact of AI will have on either displacement, automation, or how might it augment different roles. So I think trying to prepare for multiple contingencies feels wise from my perspective. And when I look at some of the research around, the occupations that might be disproportionately impacted, often those are ones that are also disproportionately hiring immigrants and refugees. So for our work, we really want to think about that, but also maybe, to use your framing from before, Brooke, lean into where might there be possibility, right? I think there's some interesting organizations I've spoken with that are thinking about how might you use AI to better recognize the skills, say, that someone holds, or certainly that immigrants and refugees bring, to make sure they can be recognized and get back into the workforce in their new country. That could be a real plus side in shortening the curve into a quality job, or thinking about how can we support our workforce and education practitioners into utilizing tools of AI to augment, not to replace their jobs, but to help them they're being asked to do a lot of things, right? So maybe to help take some of that burden off. I think absolutely, though, coming back, like we need to think about ethical parameters for how these are being deployed. But I do think there is both a need to really focus on the potential downside, but also lean into some of the possibility. So thank you.